we are 2 days away from the U.S. holiday of Thanksgiving. And you know what? While we're on the topic, I'm thankful for you all. I really am. This is always the highlight of my month, like these 2 weeks that we do it, sometimes three. I just love hanging out with you guys and catching up and just talking shop and learning what's new together. Y'all always have such great questions. So I don't care what Richard and Scott say. I'm thankful for you all.
Well, thanks, Garrett. We're also very thankful for you as well, even with comments like that.
Nothing but love.
Nothing but love.
What are we talking about today, Richard?
And nothing's going on. It's a quiet week.
If you're in Microsoft world, it has definitely not been a quiet week.
Oh god, no! Ignite. Well, Ignite was crazy, and then the weekend was even crazier. So it's so crazy. We don't even know what's going to happen. So
nope.
We'll probably wake up Thanksgiving morning, and there'll be some drama then too.
We actually talked about what happened over the weekend in strategy class last night at school, and it was interesting about that whole positioning when you start taking strategy, and it was interesting listening to other people's thoughts and opinions on it.
Yeah. Well, we could spend a whole office hours talking just about that, but let's talk about the other stuff that we had announced.
Yeah, let's talk about the fun stuff.
Yeah, so we got some Ignite stuff to go over. So let's kick all that off. Let's jump forward. Oh, hey Garrett, put a turkey in here. So.
I caught Richard off guard. Gobble gobble.
Like choking now. You have to choke it on the turkey.
Surprise turkey.
All right, so Ignite 2023 recap. I like the different color scheme for the first slide, and then now we're going back to the old. So you guys are kind of getting us in the middle of a transition. Next office hours, we'll have a whole new color scheme for our slide deck. But right now, we'll go over.
We need to change the name of it too. We don't need to call it EDU Endpoint Office Hours. Call it Microsoft
Copilot Office Hours.
Yeah. No.
Oh, it's not Copilot EDU Office Hours?
Nah. Only if there's demand. If customers really want it, we'll consider it.
Okay. All right. So the announcements. I don't know, Scott. Do you want to kick these off, and then I'm going to go specifically into the Intune Suite stuff. But I'll let you go over since you slide deck off.
Yeah, absolutely. So just some Intune. Are you going to go more deep dive into it, or do you just want me to cover the 2311 piece?
Just the 2311 piece.
Okay. Yeah, I can do that. So 2311 for Intune is now available. If you haven't, so there's a couple of things that stood out to me that I wanted to bring to your attention. This is I haven't seen this before, but but in the settings catalog, if you we now have management for the Linux subsystem for Windows. I've never messed around with those policies, never had a need to, but now you can use those in Intune if you want to actually manage Linux subsystems on other Windows devices. So that's in the settings catalog. That looks pretty cool. I also noticed there's a lot of changes to MDE, especially around macOS and Linux. So if you're using, what I did is when I created this slide, I actually linked to the plurb in the documentation, so you can click on the link and it should take you directly to it. And then there's also some changes in Windows Firewall. Like they don't call it Microsoft Defender Firewall. Some are name changes, but some are more significant. So if you do manage Linux devices in Intune, or if you're using MDE for Mac OS or Linux, take a few minutes, read through those changes, because like I said, they have changed some of the naming for some of the stuff. So you just want to be aware of that. And then I will turn it back over to Richard.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. There's also some other changes in 2311 that Garrett and I just kind of noticed. I don't even think we documented any of them in the what's new page. But things like your Windows update rings, they now just show up in device configuration profiles, which they weren't there before until 23.11. And there's a few other just odd things that I didn't expect to be there. So yeah, so that all landed on Monday of last week. And so
I think there's icons now back in the devices pane. So that new devices preview, we didn't have icons. Now there's icons.
Yeah, but that actually was documented. But the changes for like update rings showing up, almost like settings catalog objects, was kind of odd to see that. Also, export import capability is now available for settings catalog items. So if you want to export a settings catalog, you can go ahead and click the 3 dots to the right of your settings catalog object in your device configuration profiles. And then you can also import that same thing. So if you wanted to export from like a dev tenant and import into a prod tenant, you could do something like that. So
it's big for us when we make new test tenants all the time. We can just do export import.
Yeah. If you've got dev test internally, it's good. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
They also added, I think they have a config, the config refresh we've talked about.
Yeah,
I think they have that in the drop down now. I was going to go confirm that, but where you could actually run it on an individual machine as a task.
Okay, cool.
I'll see if there's a screenshot. If not, I'll throw it in the chat.
All right. So in terms of Intune, so because we're using PowerPoint Live, the links that you see here on the slide, you can click into them. So some of you are probably already clicking into some of the stuff, and you guys probably already read a lot of this stuff last week. But what I want to focus on a little bit more deeply is around the 3 additional Intune Suite features that we'll be releasing next February. So the first of those is going to be enterprise. Well, actually, I'm going to talk about advanced endpoint analytics. I'm going to go in reverse order here. So with advanced endpoint analytics, that is going to be generally available February 2024, which is the same for the other 2 features as well. But in advanced endpoint analytics, which is already there today, if you purchased the suite or if you've looked at the suite, the advanced endpoint analytics has actually been around, I think, since March or shortly after March. But what we're adding to this with advanced endpoint analytics is the ability to device query. So if you've used CM Pivot before in Config Manager, you're not going to have that same capability with Intune. So you can select a device and be able to query that remotely. So very cool feature.
Just as some added commentary, I'm actually really excited about this. I think it'll be really nice to have that capability, but I think this also brings the value of the advanced endpoint analytics really to light, right? Like if you look at what's available from a suite perspective and you get this today, you can, drill into some reports based on scoping, which is cool, and you get some device timeline views, which is also helpful for troubleshooting, but it's still pretty lightweight. I think this is one of the more powerful features that will actually release kind of in this, what they note as advanced endpoint analytics. So I'm excited for it.
Yep. And then we're also adding the new battery health report. And so in Windows, you've been able to actually pull something like this yourself using power config. You can run power config, I think it's /battery report, and that will dump out a battery report local on the machine that you can check and see like what the battery life is like, how healthy the battery is. But now we're taking that same concept and bringing it to Intune, so we can tell you holistically across all of your devices what the battery health looks like. And so what we've done with endpoint analytics is what you're seeing on screen. You actually have this today with advanced endpoint analytics. The ability to see different anomalies. So in this screenshot, the anomaly here is that over 5% of your devices have had an application crash or hang in a 48-hour window. And so that 5% threshold is the anomaly, and it says, hey, you're up above this threshold. That's a problem. And where is it a problem though? And that's the bottom of this screenshot. So the bottom of the screen, which shows you the different groups. This shows you like which devices have this application in common. And so the number of devices in this group, 2 of 3. And then below that, there's devices that might have just not only just this application, but also a driver. So what we do with advanced endpoint analytics is we're actually doing correlation with these anomalies and then grouping devices based on cohort. So you can easily see where you're having a problem. And it focuses your investigation directly to the devices or the applications that are problematic in the environment, instead of you having to make those correlations yourself. And so you have this today. This before February 2024, you could actually leverage this today with advanced endpoint analytics. But what's new, device query. So the new stuff, just like CM Pivot, you can query your devices with device query. You'll use KQL, so Kusto query language, to query devices or attributes of a device to understand, various things about that device. So if you wanted to check out like what services were started, BitLocker was enabled, CPU information, all that kind of stuff, you'll be able to query it in real time. So this is not going to like a data warehouse or anything. This is actually connecting back directly to the device. The device has to be online. You'll be able to communicate to it, but you'll be able to run these queries in real time against the devices. So if you've used CM Pivot before, it's very similar to that. And then lastly, battery health. So with battery health, just like with startup performance, if you ever use endpoint analytics to look at startup performance, like your the boot times, how long it's taking devices to boot, very similar here with battery health. It's going to look very similar. In this case, though, we're giving you the battery capacity score, so you can see like what we have scoring that we're adding to not only just the capacity but also runtime, so how long the battery lasts, as well as the overall capacity of the battery. And so that information is now going to be there. That's going to come February of 2024. So pretty cool stuff that we've got there. Now shifting to enterprise app management. So this is probably the biggest thing that I think most people that have asked us about the suite have been interested in. And what this is, if you're not aware, it's effectively us including a third-party application catalog directly into Intune. And so you might say, well, Microsoft, you're already doing that. You guys already have the store app experience where you can go into Intune, you can search the store for applications and deploy them. So why is this any different? Well, it's different because we're actually including not only just the application content, which you can get from the store today, but also the installation command lines, the detection methods. But this is for all applications that would be typical for enterprises that aren't in the store today. So the way that the store experience works today is that the vendor, the ISV, the person that makes the app, has to actually put the app in the store. And we've got quite a few vendors that don't do that. And so what we're doing here is we're actually providing you that third-party catalog. We're working with third-party vendors and other folks to create this experience directly in the Intune console. And so we'll provide all the application information. We will make the process is going to pretty much be almost, to you as a customer, it's going to feel very similar to how you're deploying store apps today with a new experience. You just search for the app, you deploy it out. But there's some minor differences to this. So when we look at the screenshots for this, and we don't have anything to really show physically today, like none of us have access to any of this right now. It's in private preview with a few customers. There's not going to be a public preview. It's just going to go directly to GA when February 2024 rolls around. But in here, what you'll be able to do is just go add an app like you would for a store app, search and find the app that you want to deploy. The list that you see here isn't everything. This is only just showing an alphabetized list. And so you just go ahead and search for your app. And then what's interesting, and I'm sorry that the screenshots are not great. They're not very clear. Seems like whenever we upload screenshots to tech community, like the screenshots just don't end up very clear for whatever reason. There's probably some compression that's going on there. But what you can see here, when you show the catalog of applications that you have deployed in your environment, what this will show you is the installed information, as well as any new application version information that is available for those apps today. So if there are updates, we'll tell you that the app updates are there. But that doesn't mean that we're actually going to update those apps. You'll also be responsible for updating them. What we're going to provide you with, though, is the ability to easily update those apps. So that way you don't have to go and repackage things, because that's usually what takes the most. There's really two things that take the most time. It's packaging the app, downloading it, and converting it to an Intune WIN file. But then it's also creating that detection method. That's probably the thing that takes the most time, is trying to figure out, how am I going to detect this app? Am I going to use a registry value? Am I going to use a script? Am I going to use MSI product code? There's all sorts of different ways to do that. And so we're going to provide all that information for you, and we will also keep up to date with the apps, and you will be able to deploy the updates for those apps easily without having to go and repackage the content. And lastly, Cloud PKI. So this is probably one of the more confusing topics that I think we have to talk to customers about, is certificate deployment with Intune. And so what we're doing with Cloud PKI in the Intune suite is we're going to make this experience much easier by basically creating a managed PKI that we will manage the certificate authority for you. You will create the certificate authority within Intune, but it'll be managed by Microsoft. And so what this means is that you'll be able to deploy certificates to Windows, iOS, macOS, and Android devices. And you can already do that today. The certificate profiles are there for SCEP certificates and PKCS certs. But you today need to stand up on-premises infrastructure. And we'll talk about what that looks like here in a bit. But this is going to remove the need for any of that on-prem infrastructure. So that certificate authority that you have on-prem today, that you've been deploying certificates for group policy, that isn't going to be necessary anymore. You'll probably still have it, but you won't need it in order to handle certs through Intune. You can do that all standalone through the cloud. But then there's NDES. So there's an NDES server. There's a Windows Server feature called NDES that you need in order for this all to work today with Intune. That is not going to be necessary anymore. The Intune certificate connector and the reverse app proxy. So all of that infrastructure goes away, making this whole process super simple to deploy certificates. But it also makes it a lot easier to adopt certificates for authentication to things specifically like Wi-Fi. But also if you need to deploy certs for VPN, Windows Hello, and if you're today using like your wireless, if you're using like MS Chat v2 for you're using password authentication to your wireless, this will make it a lot easier to deploy certificates. If you haven't stood up NDES or you don't want to stand up any like additional on-prem infrastructure, we're going to take care of all that stuff for you. And again, this is going to be generally available in February 2024. And so what this looks like today on-prem is, if you look at the laptop on the left, on the bottom, you've got your WPA2 enterprise wireless network that you're trying to connect to. But in order to get to that, you need to get that device onto something first. So typically that's going to be your provisioning network. And then once you're on that network, if you're trying to do something like autopilot, or just try to get the device enrolled into Azure AD and then ultimately into Intune, we've got to talk to Azure AD and Intune somehow in order to get your certificate profile. So we do that. Let's just assume we're doing autopilot. So we'll talk to Azure AD. We'll then talk to Intune and get the device enrolled, and all our stuff's going to be deployed down. But in order to get those certificates, we got to reach back on-prem. And so we've got to go through various layers to get there. And one of the layers you don't see here is the Intune certificate connector. But just assume that that's another box within this chain. But when you look at the Azure App Proxy, you have to hit that first. Then you got to get to the certificate connector, you got to get to the NDES box. Then you got to get to the AD certificate services server. And then it's all got to flow back the other way before we actually get that certificate back to the device, which then gives you access to the network. So what we're doing with our Cloud PKI is we're removing all that stuff that you see on the right-hand side that is not in the cloud. So all that stuff then just gets shifted up to the cloud, and you don't have to manage any of that. And so what that looks like what that looks like in Intune is you will create your certificate authority. If you don't have a root CA, you'll create the root CA within Intune, and then you'll create an issuing CA. And if you have any intermediate certificate authorities that you want to put in there, so if you have Leaf certificate authority, you can go ahead and put those CAs as well, so we can chain all of that up. And then you can also specify the encryption type. So at the bottom, you'll see the key type and the algorithm that's used. So you'll select that, and then you'll be off and running creating the cert or certificate authority. And this screenshot just shows you the properties of what your issuing CA would look like. One thing to note here is like the CRL, so the certificate revocation list, that is usually kind of a challenging item to manage when you're doing this on-prem. Being able to access that and make it easily accessible is not always easy for people that aren't certificate admins. And so we're basically just putting that in the cloud, making it pretty easy to leverage. And then when it comes to monitoring, you'll obviously be able to monitor the certificate authority. So on the top left, you'll see that we've got a little monitoring tile that explains the active certificates that are out there, how many have been expired or revoked. You'll be able to view the certificates, and then you'll be able to view the issued Leaf certificates or the issued intermediary certificates. Leaf intermediary can interchange, the names would be interchangeable in this case, but you'll be able to see all of those as well. And with that, Garrett, I'll turn it over to you to talk
Thanks.
about.
Really quick, couple of questions was, can you create code signing certificates? Do we know that answer yet?
We can't give that answer yet. I know the answer to it, but I can't give you the answer to it right now because we haven't announced it. So we're still early. So if we're asking for specific questions on the functionality, just be a little patient. We'll have all that information as we get closer to February. But when I saw internally the presentation that we gave on how this is going to be released, I was actually really happy with the capabilities that are coming with this, because in the work that we've done as a team with our customers on this, this has been a huge. It's been a huge thing. It's been a huge challenge for people to understand, and how we're implementing this, I think most people are going to be pretty happy with it. So I'll just leave it at that.
I think that suffices. Good answer. All right. So moving on, the next kind of area of topics that we wanted to address was what's next in Windows 365. So if y'all know Christian, who is one of the lead PMs for Windows 365, he actually tweeted this out, and I was like, I'm stealing it because it's a great summary of the Ignite announcements. The top 3 that we wanted to make sure that we addressed, or for those of you who are looking at Windows 365, who have been interested in Windows 365, or have even done a demo and kind of compared the capabilities of Windows 365 versus like AVD or Azure Virtual Desktop, I think you'll be excited to hear that we are bringing GPUs to Windows 365. So we will have some dedicated SKUs that support GPUs. There's a link in the deck that I'll share with you all that has the information around it. They are going into public preview. It's still in private preview today. There's actually a wait list now if you're interested in doing that. Internally, we haven't seen any of these yet, but I'm really excited because I've had a lot of customers who are looking to, they wanted the model of Windows 365, right? They wanted the simplicity of the deployment of the cloud PCs. They like the manageability of it, but they needed that GPU support, whether that's in like labs or for higher end graphics software, things like CAD, Adobe, what have you, where we can offer up those higher skewed machines to any device and be able to access that for students. So really excited to have that announcement. They kind of snuck it in there. There wasn't anything big on stage announced around it. It was just a blog published, but I would encourage you to go sign up on the wait list if you're interested in that. The other thing that we announced was a higher SKU of Windows 365, which is now a 16 vCPU version of that. And so if you were looking for something with more high compute capabilities around that, we can now offer that, and that's actually available for purchase today. And the last thing is we have updated what was the Windows 365 app inside the Microsoft Store. We have now rebranded that to generically the Windows app. And this is now a Windows app that's in the Microsoft Store. It's also available on iOS and Android. And this is going to be that front end for your users to access all of their virtual desktop options, whether that be cloud PCs with Windows 365, that could be virtual machines through AVD, or it could be virtualized apps and app streaming through AVD. So any one of those three options, they will now be presented into this UI. I have a little demo. I can share my screen really quick just to show you all. So I'll do this, and then Richard, just be prepared to share again. But I will, if you can see my desktop here, there's now a Windows app. I'm going to launch this. Got it pinned here. And it takes just a moment. Like that. And as soon as it loads, you will see that there's a devices and an apps page here. And if I click devices, you'll actually see all of your virtual machines that you have access to. So here's my Windows 365 machine, and then I've got a couple of AVD boxes that I'm able to jump into. Similarly, for apps, if I had any app streaming capabilities or any apps that had been provisioned to me through AVD, I would see them in this view too. So having a consolidated view to be able to get into all the virtual machines, even RDS, I think is supported now with this. So if you wanted to, you could add those in there. Just having one app to be able to access all of your Windows cloud PCs is pretty exciting. So a few settings just for the visibility and capabilities in there. You can sign in, sign out if you want to switch to a different account for testing purposes, like you all. You do have to enable this preview button here to get this view. Otherwise, you'll just see the Windows 365 app. But if you enable the preview mode, you'll also get AVDs in there. So pretty cool.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because my app hasn't updated, and I don't have the toggle. So it's, yeah, I'm still
rolling out,
still going out.
All right. Yep. So those were the big announcements around Windows 365. There's a few other ones you'll see, like Windows 365 AI capabilities. We made that announcement. That's really just some intelligence behind resizing capabilities. So if your users are leveraging cloud PCs and they're kind of hitting that threshold of performance, and there's some recommendations that they might need a higher tier skewed, or that they're not leveraging all those resources and you can lower that down to save some costs. That's what we mean by Windows 365 AI. Notice that I did not say Copilot. It's just Windows 365 AI. And some other cool views and like connectivity monitoring, I think expanded countries for frontline, and then Intune Suite support. If you haven't heard, EPM now supports Windows 365. There was a delay there. And we went GA with single sign-on for Entra ID. So some minor announcements, but those were the big ones.
Yeah, no, lots of investment in Windows 365. So it's very cool to see the hybrid support now for both Win 365 and AVD in one app. So that's cool.
Yeah.
All right, Patty, do you want to talk about Universal Print?
Yeah, sure. Let me share my screen. Let me know if you can see my screen, Richard.
Yep, you're good.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Paddy. I'm part of the same team as Richard, Garrett, and Scott. And I take care of Pacific and a little bit of Midwest region. So as we discussed, the primary agenda of this discussion is to give you a quick update around the new updates on the universal print rather than discuss a deep dive into universal print. Having said that, we want to give you a little bit of a background on the universal print before we talk about the updates. Um, so with the current setup, what we might typically have is a print server and the client on the other side, and the printer itself, and you might also be using a third-party service like PaperCut. One of the main reason on the server side is maintaining the queues and the print jobs, and on the client side, we maintain all those printer drivers. With the new setup, what we will be eliminating or trying to reduce is the server footprint, and also the administrative overhead involved in maintaining all those drivers, the printer drivers. So how we do that is, as you can see here, no, there are printers available in the market today, which are universal print ready, or you can also use your existing printers that don't come with universal print feature, but you can still use a small lightweight connector and use those existing investments in your printing environment. And on the other side, you have the client itself. As you can see, you don't require a printer specific drivers, and the drivers that are required for the universal print are already inbuilt into the operating system. So you don't have to deploy separate custom drivers for each and every printer. And you can also use the universal print feature from the mobile devices using the web. So that's the client part and the service part. And you can see that it requires the identity to be tied with Azure AD, either directly or as an hybrid solution. And talking about the printing jobs, this is already part of your existing M365 A3, A5 faculty licenses. Each license provides you with 5 print jobs, which means 1,000 faculty licenses will give you a 5,000 pooled jobs, which can also be used by the students in the same tenant. And if required, you can also purchase additional print jobs above and beyond what your licenses provides you. And there are multiple players in the market today who support the universal print printers, and also build apps specific for these universal print enabled printers. So now we get to the new updates that were released in Ignite. One of the big thing is now, apart from Windows and mobile devices, you can also use macOS to print natively without installing any specific applications on the device. We have also added the support for pull printing and secure printing, which means a user can give a print job from a device and walk to any printer within the campus. And once they authenticate from that printer, they can start printing from that specific one. Instead of, earlier we used to point at a specific printer. With the pull printing, you just give the job, and it stays there as long as the user walks to a specific printer and authenticates, and from there they can print it. So that's pull printing. With secure release, what happens is the printer does not print the content until a user authenticates, once he's or she is there near the printer. By that, you avoid wasting the paper, And second, it also adds to the privacy and security compliance for the user. Delegated support has been added, which means a printer admin can have another user to manage the group of printers in a specific campus. For example, the central team can delegate the printer access to an IT admin in a specific college or in a specific campus, which is different than the central IT. And lastly, we have also added new signals that can help you troubleshoot some of the printing failures. For example, you have added uh, error codes that will tell you where exactly is the print failure is happening. Is it happening in the queue, or is it happening on the client side, or is it happening on the printer side? That will help you to traverse through the flow and gives you an kind of uh, uh, view for you to troubleshoot. And for information purpose, we have also added some of the useful links here. Once the deck gets shared, you can take a look at these information. That should be it from my side. Garrett, any questions?
I think there's some interesting comments in the chat. So I know that there's a concern here on the number of print jobs. So it is 5 jobs per licensed user. However, these jobs are pooled. So if you have a bunch of users that aren't using their print jobs, then others can use those. So your print jobs are pooled. It's not 5 per user, and because if it was just 5 per user and everyone printed, you'd probably run out of print jobs real quick. So that number is pooled. Now, for some of you, it's probably still not enough. If it isn't enough, you can purchase additional jobs as well. So you do have that capability too.
I also see it. One of the comment is this daily the print jobs? It's on a monthly basis. Ita.
2,000 active uses. So Dance's got print server that's got 2,000 active uses and 58,000 print jobs.
Sounds like you need some OneNote in your life.
Are these valid? Is 58,000? Are those 58,000 jobs valid print jobs, or is it someone printing too much? I don't know. Could all be valid, right?
Yeah.
Almost 400,000 pages.
Wow.
Man.
Did you plant your own forest? That's nuts.
I'm gonna start a paper company.
I have always said that. Like think about it, like cardboard.
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
the amount of shipping that goes on in the world. I'm like, if I ever have to leave IT, I'm going to the paper company because you will always need cardboard.
Thunder Mifflin. There we go.
There's another interesting one about chargeback model. I don't think we have support for that today, but it is an interesting comment. So
yeah, there's no real easy way for us to do chargeback for something like this. I don't know that we couldn't do it in the future, but right now that's not something that's in there.
Yeah, I don't mean like chargeback to Microsoft or anything, right? I just mean for because PaperCut will tie into a essentially like an accounting system. So if you get library users and stuff, they're going in and then printing off so they can charge back to whatever
their cost center for that specific department or what have you. Yeah.
So they basically get a quota and they can buy a quota and then it basically charges it against their quota.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd be kind of curious how PaperCut accomplishes something like that, to see if that's something that we could potentially do. but today there's just no support for it right now.
No.
What about a user print counter?
Yeah, PaperCut has that too, a little UI that sits on the desktop that gives them a notification of, are they close to that threshold of printing jobs, or what that chargeback is, like, hey, this print job is going to cost X amount. Are you sure you want to print this? I assume, Leaf, that's what you're talking about.
That'd be kind of cool, actually, to put it in the settings app, and then have like a toast notification if you're about to hit some threshold. It's like telling you got like 5, jobs left, or you got a job left, or like just some sort of notification to them.
Yeah, I know that the cost centers is really a big deal, because I know we cut back. We went to PaperCut, and I think we went and this is a small site, and it was like maybe 75 people, but they went from like $20,000 or $30,000 a year in paper and toner costs to like 5, just in like the fact that they were self-monitoring and self-reporting and just doing basic accounting.
Yeah. Okay. So it sounds like a lot of you guys are still printing quite a bit. Would it be useful for us to actually get our Universal Print team on a call? Would you guys be interested in hearing what they have to say and sharing some of the feedback that you guys use? Because it's been a while since I've brought anyone from education to them. But it sounds like a lot of you guys are at least still printing quite a bit. So.
Also, what about
Yeah.
quota management per user, right? You said they're pooled, but how do you make sure somebody's not hogging all the print jobs?
Well, right. Yeah, that's a definite concern, especially with students, printing reams of paper. Yeah. Okay.
Just a side note, we went from $600,000 a year to under $200,000 a year simply by implementing PaperCut, because we were no management whatsoever. So like you said, reams of paper, we had fraternities printing out 50 to 60 day all color manuals for every one of their users.
Oh my God.
Yeah, they were going buck wild. But just in the last month, we've got 6,500 users printed out 130,000 sheets. And with our licenses, we're roughly at 39,000 sheets. So we would have to buy a tremendous amount of credits for that to work for us.
Got it. Okay. So printing is still heavily used. Okay.
We're trying. A lot of old school thought to get out the door before we can really push that too much.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. All right.
But love the idea. Love the idea.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks. Yeah, we have 13,000 staff licenses. So that would barely cover, and really, this is only one per university. Yeah. Yeah. So especially if they're like with five jobs to, for each of your faculty and staff. Actually, Patty, do you know, or any of you guys know on the call, if they have student licenses, we don't include the student license in the pool, right? It is only faculty and staff. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's just the jobs that they buy as additional packs, but other than that, the actual license is just for the faculty.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So at 13K times 5, I mean, you're at 50, 65,000 thereabouts. So, and if you're, what are we, 40 to 1? Isn't that the ratio that we're doing for student use benefit? It's like 40 to 1 or something like that. So, I mean, you're definitely going to have a huge gap there between the number of jobs and the overall population of users that you have that would be printing. So, okay. Yeah, 1365. Yeah, so that gets a little closer. 13K with 65,000 jobs, but that's not your licensed users though. Okay. All right. So we got some time left here. Is there anything else that any of the Microsoft folks, anything from Ignite that we didn't mention that you'd want to talk about? Remember, trying to refrain from saying,
as long as it doesn't start with a C and end with a T. Just kidding.
Starts with a co and ends with a pilot. Yeah. No, and there's a ton. Like we could talk about like Security Copilot and Intune Copilot, or Security Copilot in Intune.
Yeah.
Talk about that. One of the things that we will be doing as we get closer to release of some of the features that we did talk about today, we will be getting the product managers to come on as GA approaches, to have them come and speak about their features, just like we have in the past. So this is just more of a tease of some of the announcements that we made. But it's going to be pretty exciting, I think, come February. I think Garrett and I were joking that I think Intune's probably going to fall over in February with all this stuff that we're announcing and releasing then. Because it's not just this stuff. There's also other things as well that seem to be hitting Q1 of 2024. So,
yeah.
Hello. Sorry, it's Gary Fab calling from tech support.
Hey, Gary. Did he mute or did you mute him?
I didn't mute him.
Okay.
I think one of there was a few things that I liked at Ignite, but one of the big ones I was personally excited for was the announcement of the new Microsoft Planner and bringing the Microsoft like tasks and the tasks in Teams and all of that. It was kind of a mess. If you wanted like a to-do OneNote, like all of that stuff is being brought together finally in a cohesive app called Planner. And I'm actually excited about this. We're even bringing Gantt chart views into Planner, which is something that's been hotly asked for a long time. So Planner, I'm actually really excited about that announcement. I'm trying to think if there was anything else major that wasn't AI related. Jesse, I don't know when it's rolling out. I don't have that timeline, but I know I have it internally. So soon-ish, I would say. Yeah. But on that topic, there's a couple things that we were talking about just as in the future of office hours. You know, of course, Richard just mentioned like Security Copilot, Intune Copilot, and those types of things. We are going to have sessions on that, and you can bring your questions for that. But I also don't want to overlook some of the other big things that Microsoft is doing. So one of the big ones that we talked about internally was the new Teams deployment. But I think that it hits your desk, right? It tends to fall in the laps of desktop admin. So I want to make sure that you all are aware that we have moved up the timeline to move to the new Teams client by March 31st. So we were thinking about doing a session on that to make sure that you understand what you need to know for getting ready for that. And then that also brought up another question of just getting current with M365 apps for enterprise and maybe a refresher for everyone on best practices for deploying M365 apps for enterprise and any specific configurations that make sense for education. So those were two sessions that we were thinking about in prep for the new year. So along with the universal print and some of those other suggestions, we'd like to know kind of what's top of mind for y'all. Does that interest anyone? New Teams deployment?
Yes.
Okay. Good. Yeah, especially with the new client and how the new client behaves and deploying it through Intune or to new devices.
Yep.
Yeah.
Just some of the nuances and changes that are out there. I know you all are pretty sharp with app deployment, but just understanding our timelines and kind of how we're doing things, making sure that you all understand all of those intricacies are good. So
yeah,
yep,
yeah, and I don't think it's just necessarily like the switch in like the Teams admin center. It's more so like, okay, well, we've got a new client that you can actually deploy from Intune, and
right.
in all the presentations that we've had in like national office hours talking about Teams and this new Teams client and how it's rolling out, like that's all for existing devices, which is fine. But what about my brand new devices that I'm buying that, hey, if I'm doing autopilot, I'm buying Surface, if I'm buying like a Surface laptop or any Surface device, Office is built in. It's got an old installation of Teams, it's got old Office, it's got like, what happens there, right? you know, there's all these other like pieces to this that like eventually will Teams get updated on the machine? Sure. But it's going to have the old Teams client first. It's got to upgrade. It's got like, there's some things to kind of think about there outside of just shifting from an existing installation of Teams to the new installation.
Cool.
Oh, and then yeah, the Office customization tool. But yeah, should we deploy M365 apps natively exactly like just through Intune, or should
That's
we
what I'm saying. That's what I'm
should we
saying. Like
repackage
maybe we
it?
should talk about this. Maybe it'll be like therapy and we can just kind of make sure that we're all refreshed on the best practices for deploying Office.
Like how long does it take to deploy Office through Autopilot if I use the built-in Office deployment versus packaging it as an Intune WIN file versus using the ODT to have it go and reach out and download the bits? Like if you follow our community, like the MVP community, if you follow Twitter or Reddit or any of those other places, people have like 4 or 5 different ways of deploying Office. So it's pretty remarkable how many are out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Cool. All right, guys. Well, we got 5 minutes left, but I think we can wrap up here unless there's any other questions. Give you guys a few minutes back. Once, twice.
Actually, there was a question on Teams installer. Did we answer that one?
Which one?
From Jesse, if I update Teams for user X, will user Y also get the updated too, or will the machine-wide installer thing get borked?
That's an awesome question. No idea. No idea.
I think both teams stay on, so I think they would
Yeah.
each individually
Yeah,
choose when to
yeah.
upgrade.
That's what I think too.
So the way that I did it is I built a group in Teams and then assigned the people that I wanted to have upgrade into that group. And then those people, like, so for example, we rolled the new Teams internally in our IT department, but then like everybody else is still using the Teams Classic client. And if you look at it, like a lot of the people, if you have both, it shows it as Teams Classic in your start menu, or when you launch it, it'll actually say like Teams. It'll just say Teams, but 90% it says Teams and then new, like there's a little new logo underneath it. But then like everybody else in my org that is not in that group is just a regular Teams user. They just get Teams Classic. They don't get automatically upgraded. So
Yeah.
Really quick, Alexander had a question about, is Loop going to continue to be available? And the answer to that is kind of. So there's 2 ways to access Loop. There are Loop components inside of Teams that will continue to be available for education. There is now a Loop app, which is like Loop Workspaces. So if you type in your web browser and go to loop.microsoft.com, that Loop Workspaces app, that is not available to education customers. There is a user voice item to make Loop available for EDU, and I'm asking you all, like every single one of you here, go upvote this item so we can let the product team know that there is interest in Loop for EDU, and we want it. That's the best we can tell you right now is there's no plans to bring it to EDU, but we're fighting for that, but we need your voice. So I threw a link in the chat in response to Alexander's comment, but go upvote that. I want to see that vote go up at least 43 times if you haven't voted already. Share with your friends, your family, your colleagues. I mean, this one should be at like 1,000 votes right now. We really need to get this one up if y'all want Loop in EDU.
Yep. I voted. I got a sticker.
Me too.
All right. Well, folks, I think that's a wrap. So have a great Thanksgiving.
Yeah. Happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
We'll see you. When is our next session?
The 5th.
December 5th.
Yeah.
So it'll be Christmas time.
Yep.
All right, guys.
All right.
Don't
Best
eat
luck,
too
guys.
much food. Enjoy.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Have a
Take
good,
care.
safe one.
Stay safe.
See y'all. All right, bye, everyone.